Hi everyone, and welcome to the third Leaders of Today podcast with me, Billy Humphreys from MRL Consulting Group. Now today I am delighted to be joined by Wendi Sturgis from Yext. Now, I won't give Wendi her own intro because I can pass you straight over. So Wendi, can you give yourself a little bit of an introduction?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Billy. And thank you for everything you do for the community. We all really appreciate it. Great to be here. So at my core, I describe myself as a technologist. I got into technology in the mid 80s when I was a wee lassie. And I've always, my career trajectory has always been about what's next and what's amazing in technology. And I call this out because I think, women aren't always perceived to be super passionate about it, or it's a guy thing. And I call it out. So I'm a reformed consultant. I spent the first formative part of my career at huge consulting firms like Pricewaterhouse. Then I was the COO of Gartner Consulting, Oracle. And I really wanted, and I think this will be an important theme we'll pull through, I felt that I wanted to get closer to the technology. As a consultant, you're always implementing it, but I wanted to actually be closer to the technology. And so about 15 years ago, I pivoted and went more in the route of startups and SaaS and technology. And there's really two that are worth mentioning. And one is a company called Right Media. We sold to Yahoo for $1 billion. It was a really innovative company in the advertising ad tech space. And then now Yext, which is also in the marketing advertising space, but very different than that company. And I've been incredibly lucky. I found Yext through my network, which, by the way, was the chairman and founder of Right Media, is the chairman of Yext. This is a common theme, right? There's always connections, and having your network is incredibly important. And we can talk more about the Yext journey, but at its core, Yext ensures that a brand has complete control over their brand presence anywhere a consumer is searching. Whatever a consumer's question might be, if that brand can be the answer, making sure that they have the accurate information and that they are the answer, whether that's on their own sites or third-party sites, wherever consumers are doing their journey, they're doing their discovery. We want to help a brand to take control. And we in Europe have almost 200 people spread across 7 offices. So Europe is a really important growth opportunity for the company. And I have had the pleasure of being the CEO of the region for the last 18 months. So that's a little bit about me.
Great. So as you mentioned, this podcast is all about championing you. We're going to talk about Yext, but talk about your career, where you started, find out a little bit about how you operate. So let's start at the very beginning. So 1990, what happened? So Home Alone and Ghost were box office slammers. A Nintendo Game Boy would cost you $89. Ice Ice Baby was the first rap song to hit #1. And then you finished at Georgia Institute of Technology. And then you landed your career at a tiny company called PwC. So let's start with that. So what attracted you in the first place to kind of join a company like that?
Yeah. And I think it's it's something I mentor so many people, and I talk to them about the advantages of going into consulting as your first job, even if you don't know that that's what you want to do long-term. So for me, it was really, really a very simple decision. I had worked for a software company since 1985. I went to work for this company when I was 18. Changed my life. That's where I found my love of technology. And I had an incredible mentor there. I remember his name, Gene Crouch. We're still in touch. He's still kicking it, and we communicate on LinkedIn. Isn't that amazing? 40.
And that's what it's about. That is what it's about. Sure.
He took such an incredible interest in me. And look, I showed some talent, some initiative, and we talked. And that company was a $300 million software company. It was called American Software in Atlanta. They offered me a job because I'd worked there for 5 years. And he said, don't take the job. You need to get additional experience and training and development that we can't give you because it's a medium-sized company. And I think that's really important. Sometimes people have to understand you can have a bigger role You can have more responsibility, which I clearly would have had if I'd stayed at the company where I had worked for 5 years and was beloved. But he knew, and I agreed with him, that I needed to get more of that training. And I think that's a really important inflection point for people younger in their career. How do you think about that? So I knew I wanted to leave. I knew I wanted to go into consulting. And here's the really interesting thing, Billy. I really wanted to learn how to code. I would have flunked out of computer science at Georgia Tech. It's like top 3, and it's really hard. And I'm like, everyone's like, why didn't you just change to CS major? I'm like, oh no, that would not have been good. And I maybe had a little bit too much fun in college, so I probably didn't have the discipline for computer science. But Price Waterhouse and a handful of these consulting firms offer these extraordinary programs. And what's amazing, Billy, and again, you have to think about the investment a company's going to make into you earlier in your career. And you should ask those questions. That program I went through cost the firm, they're still the firms, $100,000. Think about that. Wow. You're 23 years old and you're going through a program that cost them $100,000. And I'll be really honest, it kicked my butt. It was so hard. Most of the people who were in the program had programmed, they were CS or MIS majors. I was one of about 5 people who didn't have any programming background. And so it was extraordinarily hard for me. And I think that's one of the things that people need to understand when we talk about technology. There's this myth of the great mythical Mark Zuckerberg, the geniuses, right? And we all think, well, if I'm not a genius in technology, then maybe I shouldn't do that. That's a myth, right? You don't have to be, because I have that foundation of having programmed. And of course I wasn't amazing at it, but I ended up doing it for 2 years. And then maybe some people in the audience will relate to this. It's kind of another key theme from this. They were smart about it. The partners were like, wow, she's better at talking to people than she is being behind her computer. Let's get her to go talk to the users and the business people and figure out the requirements for the projects, right? And put me in more of a business analyst role. But I still was working with the developers and the technology. And so I think, and then the last thing I'll say, because it's a long answer, but I think so many young people have this question about consulting that I think it's an incredible foundation. So you're required to get about 40 hours of training a year because they're all part of these big firms, and the development and the mentoring that you get. And it can be quite tough, Billy. These are not always the kindest and gentlest places. Certainly Price Waterhouse in Atlanta in the early 90s, not a gentle, kind place, right? I mean, they were not politically correct. Some of the things that were said to us in our coaching, they'd probably be fired now, but it was a different time and a different era. But that development and mentoring after a meeting, debriefing with the whole team and saying, you know what, I did this wrong. Let's talk about what we did great and what we could do better. This culture and notion of achieving excellence. It was an incredibly customer-centric organization. We always said we don't have the most customers of the big 5, that's what it was, but we have the best. And that customer centricity, I think, is another thing that is carried through my entire career. So I'll stop, but I think it's a really important point because a lot of people ask me about, should I do a couple of years at consulting? And I think the answer emphatically is yes, for all the reasons that I just said. Now there's a bunch of negatives to them. We don't talk about that. Political, very bureaucratic, highly hierarchical. And that's ultimately what I just couldn't do. But I was there for 8 years, and they were 8 really wonderful years in my career.
So I'd say it's quite a rare, like even now you look at women who do programming in tech, there's such a big push because we know there's such an infancy of that. But you did it in the 80s when actually not a lot of people had done it. What made you, was it when you were younger? Was it things that you got into or?
No, it was really straightforward. And again, I think this, if those people, if your audience knows, and if they haven't heard of a book called Growth Mindset, it's a book by Carol Dweck and Howard, our CEO, where a lot of us here at Yext really talk about. And what I realized is I had a growth mindset. So Billy, I had another amazing mentor there. I mean, talk about, and by the way, a female mentor who was in her 40s and the 80s. Think about that, Billy, who saw a 19-year-old girl. a 19-year-old little sassy thing. I was running around in my little skirts and pumps, I had some cute little 80s pumps. She took me under her wing, and I remember her name as well. It's incredible. It's just, I'm such a believer in mentoring because it's such a young age. I had these amazing people. Her name was Marianne Pozicki, and she grabbed me out of this team that I was in. I was doing good work and said, I'm going to take her and I'm going to let her work with me on my clients. So I'm 21 years old getting to do client work, right? With an incredible experience. And what happened, Billy, was my clients started asking me questions that I couldn't answer and I didn't understand. And it was because I didn't have a technical background, because this was software, this was big technical, and that was unacceptable to me. That again, that's how I'm wired. But I thought I knew I wanted to do technology. Like that was for sure. I knew I wanted to do software. Again, to your point, very unusual. It wasn't the norm.
Yeah, it really
is. I loved it. And I said, this is what I want to do. And here I am, all these decades, scary later. And so for me, it was that growth mindset. Like something that I didn't understand. And again, I think that's a huge key of career success, is that intellectual curiosity and that desire. And I think it served me incredibly well. So I knew it was going to be hard, but it drove me crazy, Billy, that I didn't understand what my clients were talking about.
I guess also, if you look at, you made that change to go, you started there, didn't understand the tech. So you learned the tech, and then they went, actually, you probably should be talking to the customers and be more of an analyst kind of role. That must have made you stand out as a female who was an analyst that could understand the tech and understand the customers.
Exactly. No, I mean, big time. And then and by the way, there were people who were really grumpy when I graduated from that training program, my partners, because I was very successful there. They told me, Billy, that I was at the very bottom, which I'm not used to being at the bottom. I may not always be at the top, but I'm not used to being at the bottom. They were like, yeah, we were really worried about you, but a really funny thing happened. And I tell this story because I think it's the power of what you can control. I was on this project with all of these people coding, and these two very senior partners came in one day to say hello to the group. And there was like 20 of us. And I think most of us had been through that training program. There was only one person who got up and put her hand out and introduced herself to those two partners. And it was me. And everyone else sat behind their computers. And those partners remembered me. Because I had done that. And there was a special project that was going to require, it was an amazing project at Delta Airlines, working with the head of the stewardess union and the pilot union and these very senior people. And they needed a worker bee. But who did they remember? They didn't go back and pull the spreadsheet and see who were the highest ranked people in that class. They remembered me. And so that
who gave that impression. That lasting impression.
Confidence and personality. And so I didn't have, and then all my peers were like, how did she get pulled off this project to go get to do that? She sucked, they were all like loud. They didn't say that, but they all knew that I had struggled. But that was where I think I really learned that lesson early on as well. Don't hold yourself back from being, oh, should I go talk to that person? Should I stand up? Should I stand up for myself? Should I just do it? Right? We get in our head, and so much of the things that hold us back are ourselves because we let them get to us up here. And so that was an incredible lesson super early. I was 23, right? And to your point, I did stand out, and I stood out to these two guys, and it was a really cool project. And they kicked my butt. It was a very tough project, but it also helped me grow a ton.
I think everybody I've spoken to on the podcast so far, they've said exactly the same thing, as in they've gone, we need to stand out, and to stand out to the crowd or to my peers, then it's that lasting impression.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. And
so
go ahead. No, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So how did you go from being from an analyst and to realize, what, I can manage, I can actually lead people? How did that transition kind of look?
Yeah, well, I think the cool thing, and this is, again, one of the things about these structured hierarchies, the downside is the hierarchy, but the positive is the structure. It happens naturally. They actually call it up or out. And a lot of companies are like this. If they see that you can't get to the next level, they very respectfully, it's pretty amazing to see, you're awesome, Billy, but we don't see you moving to the next level, and we're going to support you and give you counseling, but we're not going to move you up to the next level. It's that structured. And I don't think most places are like that today. So it's either, do you want to be a people manager? I was like, absolutely, we believe in you. We're going to move you up. And so, I'll kind of cut to one of the questions that because you let me know some of the things you were going to ask. I giggled to myself. You said, what was a mistake that, as you were becoming a young manager. So in these kind of places, and there are many, they're not all just consulting firms. There's a lot of companies that have structured programs. You're given an immense amount of responsibility at a very young age. So I was 27. So you're thinking
Wow.
4 years later from when I came out of, and again, I had incredible work experience. I was running the whole business side. I had a programming peer, but from the business side, which was a team of about 80 people, Billy, at 27 years old.
How do you deal with that mentally?
And by the way, wait, I haven't finished.
Oh, okay.
Only one woman of the 80.
Wow. Yeah, that's tough.
79 men, including all of the clients, whose average age was probably mid-40s. And I look back and I think all of the things that I would have done different. And so here is, and I think it is the classic first time people manager. I had run a small project before that, like 3 people. And I actually had someone who had a more senior title than me working for me. So I was clearly showing this incredible signs of, leadership and confidence. And it was interesting because I was actually on, I'm not going to say the name, it's a huge Fortune 25 company out of Atlanta, huge company. Because I was based in Atlanta because I went to college in Atlanta. But I was running a sub project on that, and the client actually said, we don't like the person, and it was a woman running the project. So the firm took her off because if the client says they don't like somebody, and then the clients advocated for me. So it was a really interesting, my client champions there, but there was a whole set of people. And so 3 lessons that I learned. You can maybe not care about what people think about you and you want to be confident in yourself, but you have to win the hearts and minds of your people. And I tried to just be like the manager and by the book, and we have deadlines and we're going to meet those deadlines, team. And I didn't understand. Whether I like these people or not, it's irrelevant. I've got to get to a level of comfort and just interactivity and all of those words that you could describe that human relationship. 2, you can lead with that iron fist, or you can lead with a more gentle. And I learned that the iron fist, especially with men probably almost double my age, who probably didn't really want to be bossed around by a 27-year-old woman.
Oh my God.
Realized,
yeah, can you imagine?
Oh, not happy. And so I could have, I tried to muscle my way through it too much rather than sitting people down, finding out more. Why are you not meeting this deadline? Because I had real problems. This project was a mess, and it was huge, high stakes, $100 million project for the CFO of a Fortune 25 company. So huge stakes. And Billy, it was pretty amazing. And I will tell your audience this story. I had a man, he was on the technical team, use a pretty terrible slur and said it to me in a meeting. It was bad. It was really
in front
bad.
of others.
Oh yeah. And I got up and so the guy that had championed me to take over the project, Ed, he was a wonderful man. He said, this meeting is over. Now we are going to address the situation. And, this whole engine of Price Waterhouse and everything kicked in. And it was the individual's fault. But again, it goes back to building that relationship, understanding. And I think that sometimes women, men, whoever you are, you can get frustrated that you have to put that time in, and you can't just especially in this with the millennials, like do it I need you to do, just go do it.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work. And it never worked, and it certainly doesn't work now. And so I learned that lesson, but I actually think it was one of the most character building experiences of my life. I was young enough in my career. I learned from it. Most of it I knew myself. It wasn't like Price Waterhouse was saying, oh, you did this wrong and this wrong. The project was considered a success. It would have been difficult for a seasoned manager. It was a very challenging situation. And then, how I will laugh, like sometimes in life you get leverage. I had significant leverage for the rest of that project because of that incident.
I bet.
Yeah. So anyways, it was, I wouldn't trade it for the world. That's what I'd say. And the toughest times are what, and I know you've heard this as well. The tough times are how you grow and you
Yeah.
learn and you become who you are.
Yeah, I wish I had that tattooed on me just to
Yeah.
show people. It's,
Yeah.
I guess it's, and as well, you got to think at the time, like in the 90s, being 27 with like 70 plus men you have to
Yeah.
manage who are double your age. Like, how do you actually mentally cope with that?
I was actually thinking about it last night. I don't even think I really thought about it until like the shit started hitting the fan and a couple of incidents. We actually tried to have a bonding event. These men, they all flew up from Atlanta with their bowling balls. I mean, I just couldn't have been more different than them. They were all bowlers, right? I'm like, wow,
And you're in
okay.
your you're in your pumps.
Yeah, exactly. And then that I had to be with a team with the two guys that I was having the most conflict with. But you know what's so funny? I, I think that's the hubris of being younger. I didn't totally. I was just like, yeah, I'm really good. And I know what I'm doing. I know what this project is about. I know what we need to achieve. I know what we need to do. And I did. And like I said, I was really lucky. I had those two, this one guy, Ed, especially. And Ed got promoted as a result of the project, and he called me, Billy, and he thanked me and he said, you allowed me. And it was a life-changing promotion because this company, you only got equity in the company once you got promoted as above a certain level. And this equity, this company's done it. It's a huge company. And he called me years later and said, from the equity that I got, I'm financially set now for my life. And it's because you helped me. So even in a painful thing to have that,
That back, yeah.
I can see his face right now, Ed, who's a wonderful man. And so I think you build those relationships that you really build that trust. And even, you've got to find those people when you're going through tough times. I think if I had done it on my own and I didn't have an Ed, I think it would have been really tough. But we had a really special relationship. And so when things got tough, he was like, we're doing the right. He had a tough time too, because some of these people were his peers and they were giving him a hard time. I
Yeah,
mean, by the
sure.
way, is a total sidebar, which makes the whole thing hilarious. What we found out later was when this company did these special projects, they gave us the people that they didn't have any other homes for. So we were getting like the dredges of the company.
Oh, wow.
It was bad. But I just think, and I think sometimes, there's so much to talk about there, but I think you focus on what you can control. You then maybe start to, so by the way, I had just moved to New York City. And so you think about when a part of your life maybe isn't the way that you want it to be, then boy, how important do the other parts. And I think we've all learned this through this crazy time that we're going through. And I think for me, you ask, honestly, it was my excitement and just sheer joy of being in New York City. I got to New York and I loved it right away. And so
Yeah.
I just said, I'm going to focus on that. When I leave that office, I'm going to go have a great time and explore the city and do things. And so I think that's another thing. We're all going to go through tough times. And so make sure that you have other things in your life that help you, because if you don't and you only have work and then that's going really poorly, I think that makes it really hard to cope with.
Yeah, no, I guess also it's not elephant in the room, but we know there are very limited women in tech. We did an event together last year that was focused on women in tech. So I guess talking about that, was you managing a team like that, if you think back, because you're such an advocate now to get more women into tech and into that cycle, do you think that was kind of how it stemmed from you being one of the only other women in that team, and then you thought,
No,
I
it
need to
started
grow
way
these
before
people?
that, Billy. I mean,
Did
I
it?
went to college. My college was 5-1 men to women in my freshman class. Before I got there, it was a very big deal because my freshman class, we dropped from 5-1 to 4-1. And it was like, woohoo, there are more women. So think about that. Every class, every project, and we did tons of projects. Maybe I would have one other woman, maybe, right? It was usually me and 3 or 4 or 5 dudes. And I had so many close guy friends. I mean, you have to be kind of a guy's girl. But I think that experience, I've been in this environment since I was 18 years old, right?
Yeah.
And having to find your voice. And the thing that I say, and it surprises people, and maybe your audience has heard or seen these movies about these organizations and has a mental image, but I was in a sorority in college, very South. This is what you do in the South, where but here's what I would say about it. when you have a group of women, it's about 125, 140 of us, whatever it was, and you have that environment of 4-to-1 guys to girls. And in some of your classes, like I have a friend who's an electrical engineer. Hers was more like probably 10-to-1 guys to girls.
Wow.
Right? Because just I couldn't have done electrical engineering. Carmel is beautiful. We would see Carmel with like a pack of men following behind her as she'd walk around. She's gorgeous, and all of them, you know, they'd be like, Carmel. It was like a rock star, this goddess, and electrical. And she's a rocket scientist now, by the way, Billy. I mean, how this, you know, I had friends who were civil engineers and computer science and electrical engineering, right? I mean, all of these different disciplines, and those women, and I remember we would have these all-nighters where we would stay up all night and study for these classes, some of which were so hard for me. Not easy. Like some people were very gifted at it. Again, it goes back to, you don't have to be a genius at it. It was very hard for me.
Yeah.
I wasn't a natural. And so I think it was all the way back through school. But then remember, I talked about Marianne. Then you have an experience where you have men and women mentors, but at a young age, you have a woman mentor who you see what she did for you. And then you had this incredible support network of women who got you through and helped coach you and maybe helped give you some ideas of papers and things when you needed help. I just think it's always been a part of who I am because I had that at such a young age. Yeah, I couldn't have made it through college without my girlfriends, for sure.
So now kind of in the business world then,
yes,
the struggles of finding good female candidates, that's always a challenge. I think especially from our business, you know, we speak to clients all the time and we need more female hires. I think I've heard you say that multiple amounts of times, we want female hires. What is the solution to that? Because no one has that silver bullet and everyone keeps going back to, it starts with education. We need to get more people in the funnel to start with.
Well, for sure. And I mean, I'm definitely involved with some of the organizations in the US. I was on the board of an organization, which was less about STEM, more just about supporting girls in underserved communities. So, you know, these are fill in the blank of all of the situations that these girls go through and just trying to help them to have positive outcomes relative to their communities that they're in, because, you know, the average outcome is in many cases, I don't want to make a generalization, but could be, you know, a baby at 16 and dropping out, right? And that's not a good outcome. So trying to change that paradigm. So, and this program is just, it's called Step Up. There are many programs in the UK and others like this. You know, these communities need the resources, but I have a little bit of a different view. Yes, we have to do that. And I'm obviously a huge advocate. I'm involved with Girls Who Code and others. And, you know, I got voted one of their top speakers one of their years because they liked the fact that I told them that it was hard and that you didn't have to be a genius at it. They had all these genius programmers coming in and they all was like, maybe I'm not like that person. And they were like, okay, Wendi shot straight with us that it's really hard and you don't have to be a genius at it. So they really like that message. And again, I think that's part of, we have to demystify.
Yeah, you're on a level. You're on the level with them.
Yeah. You don't even have it. Just you have to know it's hard. Everyone's not going to be a genius at it, but it's incredible and you can do it. But here's what I would say. I think we have a program called our Upward Analyst. And we looked around, and I give Howard, our CEO, all the credit in the world. You know, there was an incredible amount of talent that had come into Yext that had really, and it kind of harkens back to my Price Waterhouse story and some other places that I worked, Oracle, there are others. There are entry-level programs. If you can't find them, why don't you at least try to grow them yourself? And so they don't all have to be. And so think about it, building a sales org, Billy. This is one of the things you do. Why not recruit out of universities? There are amazing universities in the UK, women into BDR positions. I mean, you can do that. You can go and say to the women, you can do it. And by the way, I have Julia and Teresa and Kiara, who's now been promoted. Kiara was a BDR on my team, who's now a mid-market seller. So if I couldn't go find a mid-market seller, so I have 3 women on a team of 12. Would I like that to be better? But pretty good, right? Pretty good.
Yeah.
30%. So what are you doing and how can you and your company, whether it's bringing in like that analyst program, kind of like I was an analyst, and then some of those people will go into the product org, some will go into revenue operations, some will go into operations, but you know, you're still building that talent pool. And I think because when women we'd have a problem, Billy, if it was 75% of the people graduating from college are men and it was only 25, but that's not the case. Around the world, it's 50-50.
Yeah.
So go get them and make and find that talent and bring it into your organization and have the structure to grow them. And then here's what I'd say. As a hiring manager, when we work with you, Billy, you know that. And I know that at some point you got that directive, which is why you said, okay, this woman, because I came over and we did not have the presence in enterprise sales and women. And I mandated it. I said, we're going to hire some. And by the way, you know what? Is it the ratios I'd like? But it's better than the 0 that was here before I got here. I have 2 women in my UK and working in my London office. I have a woman in Germany. They're a little bit harder to find in Germany. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 in France. So I've mandated it. And
You're
there's other
doing it. You're doing it. That's what I mean.
I'm doing it. So to say it's not, you as a hiring manager, how can you, and an action item for anyone who has any ability to influence over it. And in every hire, you may not get the diverse slate that you want, but if you don't ask to see the diverse slate, you will definitely not get the diversity because it's just easier to find the people. So those are my 2 takeaways for people. Mandate it, knowing that you're not always going to be successful because there's not the talent pool. And then how can you grow and build your own diversity within your ranks by recruiting from colleges and more entry-level roles?
You make such a valid point. I think diversity now, especially now over the last 3 months, diversity isn't just females, it's race, it's everything. And I think a lot of companies now are kind of looking how, from a leadership level, do we bring more diversity at the top and what initiatives can we bring in? And it's nice to see a company like Yext and others alike who are actually doing it. A lot of companies go, yeah, we are diverse, but actually when you actually look under the bonnet and they're not. And I think now maybe the Black Lives Matter movement it's taken that to people to actually go, let's actually look at these companies and see what they are actually doing to make that shift, to make more diversity at the top.
Yeah. And look, I think we've had to question, and Howard wouldn't mind me sharing. I mean, he and we've had many conversations about it for a very long time. I was the only woman on the executive team, but it's incredible now. Our CIO is a woman. CIO, our Chief Information Officer, Deepika, and she's amazing. We're all so impressed with her. The Chief Customer Officer is a woman, and we have some other diversity that I won't really call out, but on the executive team, it's good. But we need to look at this as well, and it's been a reckoning for us, even though we've made a commitment, and I think that's part of it. It's hard. I mean, to try to represent the population. To your point, is the talent pool always there? It is challenging, but part of the problem, I think, for the first time, Billy, and I talk with a lot of people, I think it's different this time than it has been. And I'm old enough to have seen, how the world has changed since 1990 in Atlanta, so conservative, the South, like this is the old South. Georgia is definitely Southern. Part of it is acknowledging we've made progress. We're committed. We have our employee resource groups that are really robust, very vibrant. Lots of leadership. I'm blown away with the leadership of our employees who are leading our Black employee resource group. And I've been working with them because we've been bringing these conversations to Europe as appropriate. Black Lives Matter is an American phenomenon based on our history, but there is relevance to our Black colleagues in Europe and understanding how to create the right dialogue that's appropriate for, and by the way, it's different by country. A French person of color might have a different experience and a worldview than someone in Germany or someone in Italy, but just cultural. And so trying to understand that. And what's been really interesting, and I'll say this again, you may not be happy where you are, but feeling comfortable having the conversations and acknowledging there's more we need to do. That's what I've realized is the thing. Again, what we all aren't here to know what to do to solve every problem in the world, but what are the things we can definitely, and part of that is creating a safe place where people can have conversations. And the thing that was really powerful, and I'd share this for anyone who works for an American company or has Americans, my American colleagues, who I just respect so immensely, loved the conversation, Billy, because they looked at the lens of being Black through a different lens from Europeans. And they told me, we loved it because I thanked them for their time, because they put their own time. And again, we're putting too much of the burden on our Black colleagues to help us figure out what to do. And they're the ones we need to be helping. And why are we making them figure it out? And I said to her, I was like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Like they were like, no, Wendi, we loved it because we learned and we understood that there are different points of view. And so I think that's the one thing we can all do is try to learn and to talk and to create places where people can have conversations. That's where we're at. I don't know all the answers yet. I don't think very many people.
I don't think anyone does. Yeah.
Yeah. No, there may be a few who are getting a path to it, but yeah.
So let's talk about, you've mentioned, we've touched on Yext kind of a little bit, but I guess for anyone that's listening and they're like, Wendi sounds like a legend, but who's Yext? Like, what is Yext?
What?
So for people that don't know, can you kind of give a quick kind of summary of what Yext
I gave a little bit of the summary. I'll come back to it, right? Allowing a brand. So we're a true software platform. It's not marketing tech or ad tech. It is actually a real full stack platform now that primarily marketers are our buyers, although IT is definitely getting more involved, and especially in Europe. And again, it's that ability for a brand marketer to control their brand, to make sure that they are really the answer. And so a great example, we work with the World Health Organization. As much as
great timing.
Yes, and our president may not be a supporter of them, but we believe they have an important mission in the world. And so if you go to the World Health Organization site and you have questions, I would imagine they're when we see the volume, there are so many people doing that every day. We power what we call our Answers product that is allowing people. And so 3 Mobile, for example, is a big client in the UK, and we allow people to find out about questions about 5G and upgrading their packages and getting more data plans, obviously, in this crazy, and they don't have to call the call center. So we're allowing the technology. And so we have an incredible piece of technology called the Knowledge Graph that captures all of the facts about a business, the products, the services, the people, the hours, the locations, the FAQs. And again, we do this on site with our product called Answers, but we also do it out on the internet, anywhere that consumers are searching. So it could be Amazon or Facebook or Apple, whatever. And so it's an amazing company. Like I said, I already talked about the footprint in the Europe, and we have about 1,400 employees. We went public 3 years ago, so that was an extraordinary experience. I stood right next to Howard ringing the bell on the New York Stock Exchange. Yeah, which was, I guess in a way it was a life dream. I never knew if it would happen, but it was a pretty magical moment and a culmination. So we're, just a very ambitious company. Very focused on building our client base, continuing to add to our product set. When I joined the company 9 years ago, one company, and that's one of the things that I would say to people, if you have that growth mindset, that's the beauty of technology companies. If you like that, right? You may not have to be a genius at technology, but if you love that it's changing, it's fast paced, it's growing, you get bored, you want to be constantly learning and doing new things. That's why I love technology. I get bored very easily. And if you find the right technology company, it's just year over year, it's never the same, because the company is always releasing new products, going into new markets, going into new verticals, right? We're really now, I'm really thrilled. We're working with Reckitt Benckiser, Diageo, Philip Morris. We're really getting into the CPG space. 2 years ago, we didn't really work with CPG. And so that's been fun for me as a leader, because Europe, there are obviously huge companies figuring out. And again, we have to help the company. We have to have a product that actually meets their business objectives. And so anyways, but it's an amazing company, incredible engineering and product leadership. That's really important to me, and our team is incredible.
So I've got a quote Howard said about it, and he says, "You've basically taken us from early years as a small startup to this global leader." So being the state, there's no secret, you are incredibly successful what you've done within technology. What's it like? And I guess for people listening who are that senior management level and they're ready to take the leap to board level to VP, what does that actually look like?
Yeah, and I thought it was such a great question, Billy. Look, I think you have to be comfortable with having a lot of responsibility. You know, we were at a happy hour. Imagine that. We were in a pub, you know, my British team in the UK, and one of my amazing sellers said, "I don't know how you do it. The pressure. Talk to me about how you handle the pressure." And I think the first thing everyone has to understand is that we all work in business, and business is business, and it's not personal. And I think you have to learn that lesson, that things that happen and things that, you know, you're going to have a client do something or not do something that you were banking on to hit your numbers or whatever, and it's not personal. And maybe you even have a personal relationship with that client, but they've made those decisions. And you also have to learn from that. What could we have done differently? You know, you can't be angry and defensive. I see too many people when things don't go well. So I think you have to understand it's business. And I think and I think this is a hard thing for women, being honest, Billy. I think too many times you let it hit you right here in your heart, and it just messes with you. You have to find that thing to understand. This is not something that's being done to Wendi Sturgis personally, right? When things don't go the way that you want. This is business. So that's always worked really well for me. I think it can be helpful if you have a competitive streak in your nature.
100%.
Not internally, but I hate to lose.
Yeah.
And so that fuels me externally to have that drive and to rally the team. I think for me, I'm a perpetual optimist. You know, Howard, it's something he always talks about. I think to found companies, you have to almost be like, you know, crazy optimistic, because you're doing it in the face. So I think being an optimist, I'm a highly optimistic person. Like as upset as I am about America and some of the things that are happening, I'm still optimistic we can get through this and we can get back to being the country that I know that we are. We are not the country that I want us to be. So I think if you're negative and pessimistic, you take things personally. Think about that scenario, and then you move into a senior management role. I mean, you can do it, but I think it's going to take a toll on you personally, right? To have to do that.
Yeah.
And then I think the last thing is it's okay, Billy. I think being honest with yourself, what do you want in life? And there's only one person who can tell you. And I think our society is too embedded in, how do I say, I want to say this the right way. The rings of the ladder and what success looks like. My career isn't, and Sheryl Sandberg talks about this, it's not a stepping stone that goes up. I took some twists and what would be perceived as pretty big steps back. They made sense to me. So if you're true to yourself, then if that's something that you want and you have that right mindset, then you'll be great for it. But it's also okay to know that you are better like I have an extraordinarily talented seller out of my Midwest. He really built the company. He's personally probably close to, Billy, wait for it, I think probably 40 million of our revenue. He's incredible.
Wow.
He's incredible. We've talked to him for years about being in sales management, you know, but he knows himself and he's like, no way. And by the way, I think sorry, buddy, he probably knows, if he was listening, he would know who he is. I'm not going to say his name. He's not built for it.
Yeah.
He knows that about himself. And so I think that too many times people say, oh, well, I got to go to the next level. I've got to do that. Know yourself, because I don't think everyone is wired for it. Like my husband, he's managed a small team. He's back being an individual contributor. He liked managing a team. He may go through the rest of his career and never manage another team again. He didn't love it.
Some people are wired for it and some people aren't.
And that's what I think, because I do think too many people get to this level, Billy, that you talk about, and they think I have to go for that next level because that's the next level and that's what's expected of me. And great, know that if that's awesome, if that's what you want. But I do think there's too many people, and there's a whole other topic that I talk about, and especially I think for Brits who this is not a topic that is always naturally comfortable, is your relationship to money and what's important to you. And so that's a whole other podcast we could talk about. I did a podcast out of the US for about 20 minutes of it. We talked about it. I think it's really important that you understand. And again, only you can be honest with yourself about what you want financially. And I encourage everyone to understand. I have an amazing guy in the US, and he's told me, he's like, I'm not really that financially motivated. Awesome. It's not for me to say, oh, you should be. Fantastic. He was thinking about ultimately moving into a sales track, but we actually talked about it. It's not really, he doesn't have that. He's competitive. He was a collegiate football player, but he doesn't have the competitive streak and he's not driven by money. and he's so intellectual that I think there's better career paths for him.
Yeah.
And so understanding that, to say, okay, I'm not driven by money at all, and I don't really like being competitive, and I don't like being rejected. Yeah, moving into sales probably not a good idea.
Right. Yeah.
Anyway. So we can talk about
So
your
would you say you had the whole did you kind of have it mapped out for you in terms of in your head? You were like, these are the goals, and I know that by the time I get to X, and the whole law of attraction, is that kind of a mindset for you?
Yes, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I call it my North Star. I encourage everyone to say, if you could draw what your dream life would look like, and I don't put a time box on it to maybe 20 years out or whatever. What would be like your wildest dreams being that? And to your point, laws of attraction, people go, oh, I mean, there's no way that couldn't even happen. I say, well, we'll put it out there. And then because you have that North Star, as you make those decisions where other people may have opinions on what they think you should be doing, you know where your North Star is, and you might make a move that helps you get to your North Star, but it's not obvious to other people. Who cares what they think? You know what you're working towards. So exactly, Billy. I think that's exactly right. Yes.
So you've mentioned a lot of people. Is there kind of one standout person that's kind of been your big inspiration, or that one mentor that's not above the others, but one that really stands out as someone that's gone, you know what, they've absolutely helped me here to where I am now?
Yeah, I mean, I have so many. I call it, I have a board of advisors. I really do. Because
Nice.
I think people should think about that and building that. And that's a whole other thing. People say, how do I get mentors? Well, be fearless. Back to this fearless. Ask people. You'd be surprised how, and occasionally you'll be told, I don't have the capacity. Thank you for asking me. I can't. And then you're not upset about it. It's really hard. I mean, look, Mike Walrath, the chairman of Yext, who was my boss, I mentioned him. I mean, he took a chance on me, Billy, when I didn't have the right resume. I didn't even know the difference between a CPC and a CPM and a CTR when I went into work at Right Media, but he saw the potential in me. And so I would say, from truly transforming my life and career, he's probably the most important, and he shares my value set, which is also important to find people, whatever your value set is. And mine is about doing the right thing. And he's just an amazing guy. He's been on the Yext board for like 10 years. But I have so many. I mean, and here's the thing.
But that's good. That's good.
Oh my God. I have a woman named Joanne Bradford, for example. She was the head of sales at Microsoft and then at Yahoo. She was at SoFi, which is a huge fintech company in San Francisco. And she then went to a company called Honey, which just got bought for 2 or 3 billion. She's just, I'm successful. She's wildly successful. And she kicks my ass. Hi, Joanne. She'll be like, you're a moron. Why did you do that? You know, I mean, she suffers no fools. You either work well with her because of that or not, but she will tell you like it is. When you call her and you say, this is going on, she just cuts to the chase. She doesn't pamper you or make, oh, good job, Wendi. She's tough. She can be tough. And sometimes when I need that tough love, I know I'll call Joanne, or I'm facing a tough one. But I have so many, and it's everything.
Okay, 2 last questions.
Okay.
So, are there key attributes? There obviously are, but, and I've asked this to a couple of guests, and they always kind of say similar type of things. So it's interesting what you'll say. But when you build out that leadership team, are there always the same attributes you look for? And are they things that you don't have, where you're like, I've not got this, so I need other people who have got that will complement my skills?
I think you always look for a common thread of those things that are culture, but I think the risk of having the profile be too much the same is, I think this hurts in the diversity. You know, I think it's a myth, and I think people often use too much the culture as a code for you're not like me. and so my management team in Europe, by the way, is phenomenal. And it's a really different group. What I would say is non-negotiable is being a good person. To me, that's, I gotta get that sense, you know, and we've got a key role that we were recruiting for really since last November. We just filled. And part of it is we couldn't find, I was like, oh, that person, I think they might be a little sleazy.
It's the vibe.
Yeah, but sleazy, or just maybe, cuts corners on some of the ethical things. And it's just, they're non-negotiable at Yext. And Howard and Brian, the 2 founders, we all share this. It's just No way. We're not going to have shenanigans in the marketplace. We're not going to have sellers or people misrepresenting things. Like, we do things right. But I think we're pretty diverse. And I think that this is something that people need to challenge themselves. Yeah, on the weakness, I think it's a really, really critical point. And again, so much of this theme that comes through here, and it's hard for people, is that self-awareness. Right. So many of the things, if you think about that, that's the theme. And I think you have to be self-aware to know what your strengths are. I always have a really strong operations right hand. I am detail oriented because I went to an engineering school, but what's fun to me is not the details. I can do it. And I'm not bad. I was a consultant, so I have that background, but that's not where I want to spend my time. So I had a guy named Tim Sudwitz in the US, he was the chief of staff and the CEO for our CEO. Howard came and grabbed him. He's like, he's that good. I want him. And I was like, go. Yeah. And I said, go, because Tim ultimately has career goals that Howard could help him achieve. I have an amazing woman in the UK, Amanda. And she and Kevin, my beloved assistant, who's amazing. They're kind of a team, and they really help me. So yes, you do need to know that about you. I can do it, but it's also not where my passion, where my excellence is, and where my love is. So have people that help me keep the trains on the track, and then I can do the things that I love to do. So yeah, you got to have, and you've heard that.
It's interesting, like you said, is why do you want a team of people that are just the same as you? Like, that's not great for culture. And some people say we don't do that, and then you look at the organization and go, you that's all you do.
It's all you're doing. I think people do it way more than they realize. Big time.
Yeah. Okay, so last question, and I ask this to everyone at the end. What do you think is the main advice that you give to anyone who wants to take that, who knows that actually above them is where they want to be? They know from a mindset perspective they can do that and it is right for them. What advice do you give them to get there?
Well, look, I give this to my teen girls that I work with in inner cities in the U.S. And it's not a surprising one, but and then I'll tell why as an example. Think about how, and I fail on this every day. Like, I try to really be a great person. It's one of my missions in life. I want to leave everybody with a positive experience of having met me, maybe feel better, happier. That's my mission. But trying, and again, you'll fail. I lose my temper and get mad and frustrated about something, but I try. If you treat people well at every level of your organization, it's kind of crazy how magical things will happen. And I think we as a society in the world don't value that enough. We value, you gotta be cutthroat, you gotta work harder, you gotta be smarter than them, or you've got to be like strategic. All those things are important. But here's why. When I was at Yahoo, right, media got bought by Yahoo, there was a really, really powerful role that was up. And I actually didn't want it, Billy. I wanted this other role that I thought was cooler. And the head of North America, who's also a mentor of mine, Hillary Snyder, she's amazing. She's gone on to be a CEO of 2 companies, huge tech leader in the US. Hillary said, no, I think Wendi can do this job. And here's what was interesting. It was a really cross-functional role. I was running the paid search business. So it's the biggest P&L I've ever run, 1.6 billion. So 14, huge, right? I had never run P&L that big. And that's why I didn't even want the job. And there were like 22 people who had thrown their name in the hat. And I was the person, so they had to go to product and engineering and marketing and sales and all these different groups and say, okay, here's the top 3 or 5 candidates. What do you think? I was the only person that everybody said, oh, Wendy's great to work with. We love working with her. And I got the job because of that. And so I think we as a society, now you can't spend all your time making sure that everyone likes you. That would be exhausting and really impossible task. But as you think about it, and you think about getting promoted to that next level, people around tables are going to be asked about you.
Yeah.
They say, oh, they're difficult to work with, they're cutthroat. And I don't think we talk about this enough, that this is one of the keys, right? Because you think about, no one talks about the negative. If you're off doing your thing and you're only worried about yourself, when that promotion comes, you're going to be competing with other people. It's not like nobody else wants that job, because the roles get smaller and smaller. People are going to ask, do you like working with this person? Are they a good partner to you? Are they good to your people? And if the answers come back, oh, all of the fill in the blank, you're making it really hard, even if your numbers are great or you have other things. So it's a simple thing. And I think that it can solve some of the other sins in this world that we live in, because so much of all of this is just, just trying to be gentle on other humans, because we're all trying to do the best that we can. And
Yeah.
that's kind of my mission.
Well, you mentioned it at the beginning, we said it's about making those lasting impressions, and that's where you get remembered, you stand out. That's the way you're going to do it. And yeah, that's great advice.
Yeah. And by the way,
Brilliant.
the last thing I say, and this is why I say this to inner city teen girls, you maybe can't control where you went to college. Some of us maybe didn't, I'm very, very lucky that I was able to go to, it's not an Ivy League, but it is an elite college. And I feel, I don't come from that background, and I know that that helps me. But maybe, some people I have people that have worked for me who didn't graduate from college. You have all of these barriers, and maybe where you grew up, the accent you have, the color of all of these things, but you have one thing you can control that no one can take from you. And I think we need that sense in these crazy times. And that is how you treat other people. So that's also why I love it, because we all have our baggage that we're carrying with us, but this is the one thing we can decide. How am I going to make other people feel and be and to do? And I think it is, so it's definitely, it's my personal brand that I try for. I don't have too many enemies. There's a few people, I'm a big character. So sometimes I'm a bit too much for people. And that's okay. And I know it, they're like, oh my God, there's a lot going on there. But other than that, most people really like me. But thank you, Billy. This was really
good.
fun.
Well, Wendi, thank you so much for being today's guest. It's been amazing and fascinating to hear about all the way from the 80s in your pumps, all the way through to now. So, and I look forward to kind of hearing more from you.
Yeah.
Have you enjoyed it today?
I've enjoyed it immensely.
Oh,
Thank
good.
You. I hope maybe it's helpful to even a handful of people that our time was well spent.
Thank you. Well, Wendi, thanks again. And to all our listeners, thank you very much, and keep an eye out for our next podcast. Thank you.
Thanks, Billy. Stay safe. Everyone stay safe and healthy. Thanks.